Hi guys, so just as I was uploading my last video on the NHS cuts and the disaster they're facing over winter, here is another point of view on the same problem. So I want to show you this video and talk about it also, because it's important to look at how paramedics and the ambulance services are struggling to breaking point also because of Tory cuts and the disasters that's been forced upon them also as staff. So let's hear what they have to say.
It's the start of a night shift for paramedic team Natasha and Glenn.
I imagine it's going to be very busy.
For 12 hours they're on duty, helping people right across the East Midlands.
There's always a call waiting.
Their first call of the night is to a man with chest pains.
That'll automatically get a Category 2 call, which is a blue light response.
They take him to hospital.
999.
And as soon as they're free, they're sent to a 93-year-old man who's fallen at home.
Hello. I'm going to pop this down here and I'm going to step over you if you don't mind. What's your name?
He's been down there a while, hasn't he? Yes. Since about 3:30. Oh, I'm sorry about that, madam.
Have you got any pain here? No. Here?
Ted has been waiting for an ambulance for more than 5 hours.
I was in the kitchen and I walked through.
So this is another example of how cuts are impacting the lives of ordinary people. Here's a man who has fallen and he has had to wait up to 5 hours for an ambulance. 5 hours. This is unacceptable. But this is not because the ambulance staff are incompetent or are, taking it easy. We're going to hear why.
And saw him on the floor.
That's great, well done.
Fortunately, he hasn't broken anything and seems well.
Hold on to my arm if you want.
Can you do the same to me? Hold my arm. That's it, we've got you, that's it.
That's it.
But Glenn and Natasha are frustrated that he had to wait so long for help.
The problem is, with this scenario, is there might well have been ambulances on the way to Ted, and then they've been diverted to something else, yeah? And this could have happened time and again. Honestly, somebody like Ted has paid into the system their entire life, yeah? And it's only now in the twilight years that they need us, and I feel like we're failing them.
It's not that you're failing them, it's that the government has failed them. The government has the responsibility here. They're not providing enough resources for ambulance services. If the number of ambulances are being cut, if they don't have sufficient funding, they have less vehicles they can put on the roads. And then they, as you have pointed out, they're called to what seems to be a more serious issue. Someone is having a heart attack, an old person has fallen. They have to make a decision. If there were 2 ambulances, they could send the 2 ambulances to the respective problems. But if there's only 1 ambulance available in that area, or if the number is reduced, the ambulance staff or the dispatcher has to make a decision. And it's not just one decision they have to make. They have to make numerous decisions throughout the night or throughout the day on which people they need to send the ambulance to. And the ambulance staff have to respond. The ambulance staff can't say, well, we don't think this issue is important, we won't go there. They have to respond to these issues. Even if the issue is not important, is not serious, they still have to go there. And that's time that they are spending with a person who probably doesn't need assistance, but they have to go there anyway. And it puts extra stress and strain on the staff, on the hospital itself, and on the ambulance service. But this, as I've said before, is by design. The Tories want this. If they didn't, they would fund it. And it's not a case of we don't have the money. Yes, you do have the money. I never believe a minister or a politician when they say we don't have the money. Because if they have to go to war, they will never say we don't have the money to go to war. If we want to increase our salaries, they never say, well, we don't actually have the money to increase our salaries. So Never accept the crap from politicians when they say we don't have the money. They certainly have the money if they want to invest it in the NHS, but they don't want to spend that money on the NHS. As I said before, it's because it's by design. They want to privatize it. They want to destroy and grind down the system, the NHS, to a level where the public lose faith in it. That's the goal. That's the scope. Create distrust in the NHS, and then it's ripe for the picking.
The night gets busier and they're called to a child with breathing problems in Leicester.
10-year-old female.
But any hospital treatment will have to be back in Nottingham, more than 25 miles away.
So this is another problem here. As I said before, they can't treat the patient in the local area. They have to transfer them to another area because there isn't a bed available. This is another example of the Tory cuts over 9 years. Cut in order to stress the system out as much as possible in order to break it down and make it available for private companies to take advantage of.
Yeah, the divert to Queen's, we wondered if it applied to children as well as adults.
Yeah, the same if the patient is stable and won't require an ICU bed, the QMC have agreed to accept the ED of that.
Certain hospitals like Leicester, Lincoln I believe are similar. They won't let the ambulance crews through the door until they've got a space for the patients. We went, didn't we, a couple of weeks back, and we had to wait, was it about 3.5 hours before we were allowed in the hospital with the patient.
So I don't know if you heard that, but he said they had to wait 3.5 hours before they were let in with a patient because there wasn't a bed available. You know, what do patients see? The problem is many people don't know, and it's not their fault they don't know, but we imagine we call an ambulance, it arrives as quickly as possible. It takes us to the hospital and it transfers us to accident and emergency as quickly as possible, and we are admitted to the hospital as quickly as possible. But this is not the case. We are seeing here how this is very much not the case. What happens is ambulances are rediverted to situations that maybe are more important or more serious. People are brought to the hospital. There isn't room available, but they can't be left on the street, so they have to stay in the ambulance. But what if the ambulance needs to go out and do another call? The ambulance can't drop the people off at A&E if there isn't space for them. They have to wait. This is by design once again. Maybe if you disagree with me, please explain to me how I'm wrong in the comments. But this is designed to fail. This is designed to grind down the NHS and leave it open for private companies to take over. Because part of the work is getting people on board, getting people to understand that the NHS is not working. And how do you get it not to work? By not funding it.
It's just you feel awful for the patient, basically.
Yeah. And quite often you'll be sat there and you'll hear your radio go off and it'll be control shouting out for a more severe job, collapse or cardiac arrest. And there are no crews to send. Which, it can be quite distressing, really.
Okay, good.
The 10-year-old girl has asthma, which can be life-threatening.
Okay. Do you think I could have a listen to your breathing?
But in this case, they decide rather than a hospital visit, what she really needs is a GP appointment.
There's just a bit of a waiting for the out-of-hours doctors to call back because they're dealing with so many over the weekend. And of course, it's Christmas, so there's not as many appointments about for normal GPs.
The pressure on paramedics at this time of...
And of course, if GPs are not available, then people are transferred to the hospital, even if the situation is not so serious, because they need to be treated. So this is an extra strain on the NHS. So you can see how there are many different issues connected. For example, the winter issue where more people, normally children and older people, or people with deprived immune systems, are more susceptible to illnesses. They're putting more stress on the NHS. Doctors who are on holiday, it's Christmas period, they're not available. This is putting more stress on the NHS. And then you have, of course, the cuts and the mismanagement by successive governments.
Is relentless. When other services are closed, ambulance crews are still working 24 hours a day and are always just a phone call away. This man was injured on a night out. He briefly lost consciousness, so is classed as high priority.
And ultimately we are an emergency service, so we are here for the kind of life-threatening injuries and illnesses. So sometimes if we're dealing with somebody that's maybe not known their limits, then it means that people that are having heart attacks or strokes are waiting a bit longer, and every minute that those kind of jobs are waiting, it can cause damage to their brain, damage to their heart, and it can ultimately be more of a fatal outcome.
At the end.
And she's dead right here. The idea that if people are not treated immediately, it can cause adverse effects. It can have, long-term effects on people. So, if somebody's not treated immediately for example, a heart attack or a stroke, it means that their quality, if they survive, their quality of life is reduced. And this is an extra strain on the NHS, because the NHS have to provide extra care. If somebody can be dealt with immediately, maybe they can walk out of the hospital the next day. But if the treatment they receive is delayed, it means the effects on their bodies are more, may have long-term or permanent consequences. And this is, of course, an extra problem for the NHS. It's, I'll stop the video. I'm stopping the video here. It's finished, and I'm going to stop talking about this because I'm getting really depressed about this, because, look, this doesn't affect me personally, but I feel really bad about, working class people, poor people, and also the NHS staff who are doing a job that many of us would not want to do. I have a great esteem for these people, great respect for them, because they're doing a job that many of us wouldn't have the ability to do, the mental ability and the physical ability also sometimes. It's in many cases it's a thankless job. They're not paid enough, in my opinion, and they are overstressed and overworked. And, they make mistakes, and if they make mistakes, their mistakes can have long-term consequences on many people's lives. So we should cut them as much slack as possible. We should give them every resource they need and want, because they are so important. And it's a core belief of mine that government must look after the health and education, but in this scenario, the health of its citizens. And if a government that doesn't put the health of its citizens on a high level of priority, what is the point in having a government? What is the point in voting for people who don't give a crap about your health? Please tell me, whether you agree with me or not, whether you agree with me on Brexit or you disagree with me on Brexit, please explain to me how this position is wrong. If a government doesn't give a crap about the health of its citizens, what is the point in having a government?